The prosecution delivered their fiery closing argument in the Sean Diddy Combs criminal trial.
Savage! I'm a savage! Oh! I'm a savage!
Was the man we knew as P. Diddy, music icon, fashion mogul, and cultural powerhouse, actually the leader of a secret criminal empire? That's the question gripping the courtroom and the world. In a shocking twist that no one saw coming, federal prosecutors have laid out a case so explosive, so detailed, it reads like the script of a crime thriller. Except this isn't fiction. It's real. And it's playing out in front of a stunned jury. For years, Sean Diddy Combs stood at the top of the music industry. But behind the platinum records and designer suits, prosecutors say there was a darker reality, one filled with manipulation, abuse, and a carefully controlled network that may have been trafficking more than just talent. And now, after weeks of harrowing testimony, surveillance footage, and courtroom drama, the prosecution has dropped 13 major bombshells in their closing arguments, each one more disturbing than the last. From alleged kidnappings and coerced freak-offs to the cold logistics of transporting women across state lines, this isn't just about fame anymore. It's about the fall of an empire built on fear. And trust me, it only gets darker from here. On the surface, Diddy was a brand, a self-made success story. He launched empires, discovered stars, and commanded rooms like royalty. But behind the closed doors of his mansions and studios, prosecutors say he ran something far more sinister. In the courtroom, Assistant U.S. Attorney Christy Slavic didn't waste time sugarcoating it. Sean Combs wasn't just an entertainer. He was the boss of a criminal enterprise. Their claim? That for years, Diddy used his fame and fortune to build an underground operation that revolved around sex trafficking, forced labor, drug distribution, and manipulation, all hidden behind the glamour of celebrity life. Slavic described how Combs operated with precision and control, calling the people around him foot soldiers. These weren't just assistants or bodyguards. They were allegedly tasked with carrying out illegal activities, intimidating victims, and making sure no one crossed the line. If they did, the consequences were brutal. And this wasn't just theory. The prosecution brought receipts, literal evidence, including footage, messages, and testimonies. But what really made jaws drop was what that evidence revealed about how far Combs would go to maintain power. Because according to prosecutors, this wasn't chaos, it was calculated. For most people, racketeering sounds like something pulled from an old mafia movie. But in this case, it's very real and very serious. Prosecutors say Diddy didn't just commit individual crimes. He created a system that allowed those crimes to flourish over time. Assistant U.S. Attorney Christy Slavic broke it down in court. To convict Diddy on the racketeering charge, the government must prove he committed at least 2 specific crimes as part of an organized scheme. But they didn't stop at 2. They listed multiple. And it wasn't just about what happened, it was how it happened. The jury was shown surveillance footage, allegedly capturing Diddy physically assaulting Cassie Ventura. That one clip alone sent shockwaves through the courtroom. But according to prosecutors, that wasn't an isolated moment of rage. It was a glimpse into a larger pattern. They painted a picture of a man who controlled everyone around him with fear, money, and loyalty. Associates weren't just employees, they were tools in a system designed to protect Diddy's power. From moving drugs to intimidating women, the prosecution claimed these foot soldiers helped carry out acts that built and maintained his dominance. And if someone tried to leave the circle, witnesses described threats, blackmail, even forced isolation. This wasn't just about being abusive. The prosecution argued that it was about running a criminal organization from inside the walls of a luxury empire. At first glance, Diddy's infamous parties looked like scenes out of a music video. Models, artists, champagne flowing, music blasting until sunrise. But prosecutors say those parties weren't just for fun. They were part of a much darker ecosystem. According to court testimony, drugs weren't just present. They were planned. Witnesses described how substances were regularly distributed during these gatherings. Cocaine, ecstasy, and other stimulants offered like candy, sometimes even forced on women under the guise of loosening up or getting in the vibe. But prosecutors argued it went beyond indulgence. They claimed drugs were used as a tool of control, to impair judgment, break down resistance, and pressure victims into doing things they never agreed to. Multiple sources alleged that Diddy maintained a steady supply chain, carefully curating who got what and when. And those who refused, they were often blacklisted from the inner circle or subtly punished through financial and social isolation. One chilling moment came when prosecutors referenced text messages where Diddy allegedly discussed bringing drugs to certain guests in advance, foreshadowing the coercive situations those women would later find themselves in. What once looked like the high life now started to look like a carefully manufactured trap, where drugs weren't just entertainment, they were bait. Just when the courtroom thought it had heard the worst, the prosecution revealed something even more disturbing: allegations of kidnapping. And no, this wasn't some abstract legal term. These were detailed, terrifying accounts of individuals, especially women, being held against their will, with no way out. Prosecutors alleged that Cassie Ventura, among others, was subjected to scenarios where she was trapped physically and psychologically. In one instance, Cassie was reportedly locked inside a hotel suite with Diddy's security stationed outside the door. No phone, no freedom, no consent. But it wasn't just about physical confinement, it was about emotional control. Multiple witnesses described moments where women tried to leave only to be intercepted by staff, gaslighted into staying, or threatened with personal or professional ruin if they spoke out. According to the government, Diddy allegedly used fear, confusion, and dependency to isolate these women. Some of them were flown out for events, only to discover later they couldn't just pack up and go home. Their flights, their lodging, their mobility, all controlled. And the term kidnapping, in this case, isn't being used loosely. Prosecutors believe that these acts meet the legal definition, involving intentional confinement, coercion, and a clear imbalance of power. One courtroom observer described the atmosphere during this segment as chillingly silent. No whispers, no shifting. Just a collective realization of how dark this web might actually be. By now, the courtroom had heard about drugs, violence, and kidnapping. But the prosecution wasn't done. What came next was something that blurred the lines between devotion and exploitation. According to prosecutors, many of the people closest to Diddy, especially women, weren't just part of his inner circle. They were forced participants in his world, performing tasks and acts they never truly agreed to, under pressure so intense it became a prison in disguise. They called it forced labor, but not the kind you'd expect. This wasn't about cleaning homes or managing businesses. It was about being coerced into sex acts, accompanying Diddy to freak-offs, and being made to entertain guests under drugged, manipulated conditions. Testimonies revealed a culture where saying no meant losing everything. Financial support, protection, fame, status, it all came with a price. If someone hesitated, they were labeled ungrateful or disloyal. If they tried to leave, they were replaced, or worse, targeted with threats and smear campaigns. One former staffer claimed they were pressured into facilitating questionable encounters, while another said they were expected to stay silent even when witnessing disturbing behavior. According to the prosecution, the entire structure was built to ensure complete dependency, so that no one could act freely and no one would dare speak out. And throughout it all, the image of loyalty was weaponized. It wasn't admiration, it was fear. People weren't staying close to Diddy because they wanted to. They stayed because they were trapped. Her name was kept anonymous in court, but her story cut deeper than any headline. Known only as Jane, she became a symbol of how power can quietly destroy someone from the inside out. According to prosecutors, Jane didn't fall into Diddy's world overnight. She was groomed, slowly, deliberately, and with terrifying precision. It began with financial support, gifts, trips, opportunities. To outsiders, it looked like she was living a dream, but prosecutors say those gifts came with invisible strings. Strings that tied her to Combs emotionally, mentally, and financially. She became dependent, and that dependence was used against her. Jane was gradually introduced to Diddy's notorious freak-offs, sex parties that prosecutors say were less about consent and more about control. At first, she thought she had a choice, but soon the expectations shifted. Refusing meant isolation. Questioning meant punishment. She expressed concerns about her safety, concerns that were brushed off or ignored completely. In one heartbreaking testimony, it was revealed that when Jane expressed discomfort about a sexual encounter, Diddy allegedly dismissed her fears and told her to relax, a chilling detail that prosecutors used to show how consent was constantly manipulated. Even worse, Jane wasn't just battling one man. She was surrounded by others who enabled the behavior, staff members who turned away, associates who normalized what was happening. The system, according to the prosecution, was built to keep her silent. Jane's story isn't just about one woman, it's a window into how fame, power, and money can create a prison without bars, where escape feels impossible and survival means staying quiet.
Cassie Ventura was more than just a girlfriend.
She was at the center of some of the most harrowing moments in this trial. Prosecutors painted a picture of a relationship that started with affection, but soon spiraled into something far darker. Though Cassie initially consented to being part of Diddy's world, prosecutors argued that initial consent doesn't mean ongoing consent, especially when fear and abuse come into play. Multiple testimonies revealed disturbing instances of physical violence. Surveillance footage and witness accounts describe episodes where Cassie was allegedly assaulted by Combs, moments that showed the raw, brutal side of a man otherwise known for charm and charisma. Emotional abuse compounded the physical pain. Prosecutors told the jury how Diddy would gaslight Cassie, dismiss her concerns, and isolate her from friends and family. The power imbalance was staggering. Cassie, once a rising star in her own right, was reduced to a figure trapped in a toxic cycle. The prosecution emphasized that even though Cassie appeared publicly composed, behind closed doors, she was a victim of coercion and control. Her story became a focal point, demonstrating not just the severity of abuse, but also the challenges victims face in breaking free, especially when fame and money are involved.
The courtroom wasn't just filled with stories of abuse and violence,
It also revealed the logistics behind the alleged criminal enterprise. Prosecutors presented flight records, text messages, and other communications showing how Diddy coordinated travel for women who worked as escorts. This wasn't spontaneous. It was a well-organized system designed to move individuals across state lines for the purpose of sex work. According to the prosecution, Diddy wasn't just a passenger. He was the planner. He allegedly arranged and paid for flights, hotels, and other expenses, ensuring these women were available wherever they were needed. This charge, transportation for prostitution, is legally significant because the law only requires proof of one instance to convict, and prosecutors argued they had far more than that. What made the case even more compelling were the text messages, some direct, some coded, that outlined the logistics of these operations, pointing to Diddy's active role in managing the network. This evidence painted a picture of a man deeply involved not just in his public persona, but in the behind-the-scenes coordination of a sex trafficking ring. As the prosecution laid out their case piece by piece, the man at the center of it all showed cracks beneath the surface. Observers described moments when Sean Combs appeared visibly shaken, clenching his jaw, rubbing his face, and occasionally avoiding eye contact during some of the most intense accusations, especially those involving sexual assault. This wasn't the confident mogul who commands stages and boardrooms. It was a man confronting the gravity of allegations that could change his life forever. At times, his demeanor was described as tense and distressed, suggesting the weight of the courtroom drama was hitting harder than the cameras could capture. These glimpses into his emotional state added a humanizing yet troubling layer to the proceedings, showing that beneath the public persona was someone who knew the stakes were impossibly high. The prosecution's closing arguments painted a vivid, chilling picture. Sean P. Diddy Combs as the head of a criminal empire, orchestrating abuse, trafficking, and violence behind the glitz and glam. They stripped away the public image to expose a network built on fear, control, and exploitation, challenging everything fans thought they knew. Now, the ball is in the defense's court. Their rebuttal will be crucial, but the prosecution's strategy was clear: simplify the complex, stack the evidence, and let the jury see the man behind the headlines. This trial is about more than just one celebrity. It's a test of how power can be held accountable when the spotlight is brightest. So the question remains, if even half of these allegations are true, how deep does the rabbit hole go? And what does it say about the world we live in when the biggest stars may be hiding the darkest secrets? One thing's for certain, this story isn't over, not by a long shot.